Call the July 12th meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to order. Before we do, I'm going to ask Mr. Akers to do the invocation, but before we do, the board has just found out that early this morning, former Animal Control Officer Mr. Ken Harris passed away, and I'm going to ask for a brief moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. Mr. Akers, if you will deliver the invocation for us, please.
Let us stand, please. Our loving and gracious Heavenly Father, as we come together this evening as a board to conduct the business of this county, we ask for your blessings, and we ask for your guidance, and we ask for your wisdom. Lord, we pray that all that we do and we say here will be pleasing in your sight and in keeping with your will. And the things that we do will benefit the people of this great county. Lord, we do pray a special blessing upon the family of Mr. Harris and upon Mr. Underwood, the passing of his brother. We pray that you'll bless his family as well. And we ask that you'll guide and direct in all that we say and do. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, Mr. Parton, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the only amendments you have is there's a revised version of the resolution under consent agenda item 5C, the revenue anticipation note that you should have in front of you that was received from the attorneys this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. And I take it Mr. Rogers is not going to be here since he sent all this information for us already. So, okay. Thank you. Obviously, my volume's a little loud. Mr. Underwood, any opening board comments?
None at this time.
Ms. Bobowitz?
I have none.
Mr. Seeley?
No, sir.
Mr. Akers?
No, fine.
And I have none. We will move right on to agenda item number 1, which is the recognition of the GED graduates and the Caroline Literacy Council for their work with the GED program. And we have a resolution from the board. First of all, are there any GED graduates in the audience today? If you would just please stand. I know there are quite a few people who are behind the scenes that did some great work. I didn't see Mrs. Ware, but she's the one that asked us to make this presentation. I do see, and excuse me if I don't mention everyone, but I do see Mrs. Blanton, and I don't know how long Mrs. Blanton has been working on this, but she has been a teacher for several years at the county, retired, and still does the GED program. So, Mrs. Blanton, we do thank you for all the work you've done. And from the board, we have a resolution recognizing the importance of the GED program in Caroline County and the work of the Caroline County Literacy Council. Whereas the Caroline County GED program began in the early 1970s as part of the Caroline County school system and eventually partnered with the surrounding localities to form the Rappahannock Area Regional Adult Education Program. And whereas for over 35 years, the board has provided over 1,500 residents of Caroline with an opportunity to obtain their GED through group classes, one-on-one tutoring, and whereas another key partner in the program is the Caroline County Literacy Council, which provides learners not yet ready for GED classes the individual tutoring they need to prepare themselves. And whereas many of these students go on to continue their education by enrolling in college and other institutions of higher learning and skills training, and whereas this year was a phenomenal year for the students and the teachers involved. A total of 57 students attended classes, 33 obtained their GED, and several enrolled in community college, one completing her first semester at Germanna with an A average. Is that one here? Okay. And then the last thing is, whereas the Caroline County Board of Supervisors wishes to recognize the importance of the GED program to the community and the positive and hopeful future it provides for many citizens, particularly during these difficult economic times. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors hereby extends its heartfelt congratulations to the 2011 GED recipients and its sincere appreciation to the teachers and the RARAE, the Caroline County Literacy staff, and the volunteers who worked so hard to make it possible. It says adopted the 12th of July, 2011. I'll take a motion for adoption.
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, so it's now officially adopted. Mrs. Blanton, if you would come forward, and I think there are some other teachers with you. Okay, we have certificates for all of the graduates, and I understand that you're going to have a program next door serving cake while we're in here, right?
Yes, sir.
Serving cake while we're in here.
Unless you all want to adjourn and come have cake with us. Is that what you wanted here?
I figured I was trying to work on that twice.
We cordially invite you to come have cake and punch with us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blanton. I do appreciate it. I'm going to ask you to come up after you read your statement. I'll formally present this to you. Mrs. Hatcher has the certificates for each of the GED recipients. We have them up here now.
Thank you.
So after you.
This student, who is Jamie Jones, is the one who has straight A's, not just an A average, but straight A's at Germanna. And she called me about 5 o'clock this afternoon and said, I just can't come. I'm having too much work to do with papers she had to write for an English class that she wants to maintain that straight A average in. But she told me, gave me permission to go ahead and read her statement, which starts off, good evening, members of the Board of Supervisors and Caroline County officials, and Ms. Betsy Mathias, Director of Rappahannock Area Regional Adult Education, who is also in the audience. She said, I am Jamie Jones, and I stand before you this evening as a proud graduate of the GED program and a student at Germanna Community College, having just completed my first semester of studies with grades of all A's. I'm here because of your support for the students in Caroline County who want to get an education, no matter what the age. Early last summer, my fiancé and I decided we wanted to go back to school to complete high school with hopes of going on to college. I checked into the GED program and was told that the classes did not begin until mid-September. I was afraid that if I did not begin when the decision was made, that I would chicken out and find too many other things to occupy my time. We learned that even though the official GED classes did not begin until the middle of September, Caroline County, through the Caroline Literacy Council, offered tutoring which would serve as sort of a head start for the actual classes. We began attending these tutoring sessions Tuesday nights each week and were ready to take our GED exam at the first opportunity. We both passed each of the 5 subjects exams on the first try. So, thanks to you, supervisors, for supporting the work of the Caroline Literacy Council, enabling us to begin preparing for this exam. Thank you also, Ms. Mathias, for instituting the split test so we did not have to take all 5 exams at one time. I would like to close by telling you that enrolling in the GED classes was the best $20 investment of my life so far. Where else can you get a high school education for an investment of $20 in time? Thank you.
Thank you. If the students and the other teachers would come forward, please, we'd like to take this opportunity to have a few photographs taken. projector. All right, our next agenda item will be a presentation of the bulk water supply report from Baker & Associates. Mr. Schiebel, would you like to come and give us some background and then an introduction? Portia, did you get my email? No? Thank you, sir. Rebecca, did you get it? Oh, you can't tell. Okay, I'm sending. psmith@fredericksburg.com.
Patty, can you get the PC room floor button one more time?
You want to turn the lights out so we can?
Yeah, I want to make sure it didn't come up this time. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight we're going to present to you Phase 1 of the Caroline County Water Utility Master Plan. Typically, we would complete the entire plan, but due to the limited funds of the last 2 years, we have not been able to do that. We were able to hire Baker & Associates to do that, and there is funding this year to move forward. With that, the board authorized staff to move forward with a Phase 1 evaluation of wholesale water purchase options. During this evaluation, oh, went one page too many. There we go. Phase 1 of the Caroline County Master Plan was to look at the evaluation of purchasing wholesale water from other localities surrounding Caroline County. We were also going to continue with the evaluation of the distribution system later this year, and then next year look into the long-term water supply for Caroline County for 5 MGD. If you'll recall, in the water supply plan, it was just presented to the board at their last meeting. The date for us to meet 3 MGD on an average daily basis is 2050, and that gives us a peak of 5.5. So we've got a long ways to go to meet that on a 3% growth rate. The intermediate term water supply, the feasibility, was to look at 1 to 2 and who might possibly be able to provide up to 5 million gallons a day. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Mohammed Shamid with Baker & Associates that will present this report to you.
Thank you, Joey. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would like to thank you first for giving us the opportunity to work for you for this important project. And I would like to thank your staff also for working with us to complete this project. We started this project basically earlier this year, and our intent, as Joe indicated, is to approach from neighboring utilities and contact them related to their ability to provide Caroline County with water supply for the intermediate need. We approach basically 3 utilities. And all the work that we're going to present to you basically is staff-to-staff level. We worked with them diligently and continuously within the last 3 months basically. And they provided us with a lot of information that we had to sort through, and our consideration was, as we were evaluating the different options that they gave us, we were looking actually for three quantities, if you may say: a 0.75 million gallons per day, a 1 million gallon per day, or up to 2 million gallons per day. We were looking and considering how the magnitude of improvements to get any of these three quantities, as well as the timing and phasing of implementing these improvements that they proposed for us, and of course the associated costs. All of them provided us with costs associated with these improvements, and the cost generally consisted of Caroline County share towards paying for raw water storage and water treatment. We lumped that cost into what we call connection charge. And then infrastructure improvements, and that's are associated with the within the utility or the supplier system improvement that they would need to do to make them able to provide you with the water, as well as the infrastructure requirements on the end of Caroline County as well. And then finally, the usage rate, which is paying for the water that we will use. So I'll review with you the three supply options and looking at it from the capital cost as well as from the annual operation cost. For the capital cost to get a 0.75 million gallons per day from these different three suppliers, as you could see, we showed in this table option 1, supplier number 1, basically option 2, supplier number 2, and so on. Option 3 is supplier number 3. The column to the left shows the allocation of each charge or cost. Connection charge for option 1 is about 5.6 million, whereas for option 2 it's only 2.8 million. Option 3 didn't provide us with the connection charge. They didn't assess any charges towards their supply or raw water storage. But as you could see, as we continue and sum up the cost for each option, we didn't need to go back to them because their cost is very high. Option 1 comes to be about 16.8 million. Option 2 is 15.9, whereas option 3 is about 56 million. So from this stage, actually, the first thing we did is we decided to eliminate option 3 from further consideration, of course. Then to assess the annual cost that will come out for payments towards those costs, we assumed a 30-year period at a 5.5% interest rate. And as you could see, option 1 and 2 are comparable. They are 1.2 basically million for option 1, whereas it's 1.1 million for option 2. When we go to the annual cost for option 1 and 2, the annual installments are just from the previous slides. Then the water usage for 0.75 MGD, we use the cost also that they provided for us for the different tiers that they provide for us to use. So the total annual cost comes to be about 1.7 or 1.8 million for both of them. Expected revenue basically is assuming that you get the 0.75 MGD and you assume like a 10% loss rate of water and you sold the rest to your customers. So the expected revenues is about $350,000. That means just from sale of water, you can cover up to 20% of your cost of purchasing option 1 compared to 19.8 for option 2. This theme or this pattern, by the way, keeps repeating itself in the other options as well. Capital cost for option 1, you find that option 2 is relatively less than option 1. For the annual cost, then option 1 catches up with option 2 in terms of user rate because they have a lower user rate. Again, you cover 21% of cost associated with option 1 and about 20.9 for option 2. Moving along, if you want to go ahead and purchase 2 MGD from these two suppliers, the capital cost is very comparable, 27 million, 27.5 million. The annual installments about close to 2 million per year. Then for your annual cost of water usage, 1.6 and 1.7 for each one. And then you cover up to 27% for option 1 compared to 26% for option 2. So through going through this exercise, basically, we find that the two options are comparable. Again, with a contingency 10% as we're indicating in our analysis, give and take, these two options are pretty much comparable. All the information we have are from staff to staff level. So we think this is about the right time for upper management and the board's level to get engaged in discussion and refine these options a little bit more, because the differences are minimal between the two. So it comes down to who's more ready to provide immediately the need for Caroline County. Also, based on our discussions and frequent meeting with them, we noted that they have the same concern in terms of long-term water supply. They're also looking for raw water alternatives. They're looking at quarry options to augment their raw water storage. They're looking into expanding their treatment capacities, kind of pretty much in the same boat as Caroline County. What this does to you is open opportunity basically for more regional planning, since these are major, extensive capital costs associated with developing long-term water supply. You definitely have a good chance to team up with neighboring jurisdictions for your future water supplies. With that, I open it for any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. And excuse me, but your last name was Shumet?
Shamet, yeah.
Shamet. Okay. I believe there were some questions for Mr. Shamet and Mr. Shebel. Mr. Seela, you said there was a question you had?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In all of your charts that you presented, you show a revenue cost, and it ranges from 20% to, I guess it's all right around 20%. So we're only recovering 20% of the capital cost based on the water usage and fees?
That's correct. However, that does not include any, you purchase a water, wholesale water from another supplier.
Right.
We didn't look into any other reduction in your operation or benefits you may get for not using any of your wells that you already got. So that is not included there.
I guess my question is that we still have a capital cost that we have to cover in addition to the water costs.
That's correct.
And that's amortized over 30 years?
Yes, 30 years at 5.5.
So if I understand this correctly, the 1.759 for option 1, 1 million, call it 1,750,000.
Yes, sir.
Or 60, yeah. That is the capital cost per year for 30 years?
Yes, capital cost plus annual purchase, water usage, two of them.
So water is also in this?
Yes.
So can you tell us what the capital cost subtracted from that would be? Or is that just minus the $602,000 that we're paying for water?
Exactly. You're paying $600 for water.
So it's roughly $1.1 million
for capital, yes.
for capital cost.
That's correct.
Per year. And then so forth with option for the 1 million gallon option.
That's correct.
Let's see if the water charges.
And I guess that's kind of what he's labeled earlier as the infrastructure number.
Correct.
On
If you go to the slide before it, yes.
The first couple of slides showed the...
correct.
So there is additional capital cost in addition to actual user fees for the water cost per gallon.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll also note that if you go from 0.75 to 1, each of these are shown if we were to pick one. If we were to go from a 0.75 starting out and then go to 1, you would pay the difference in the infrastructure cost between the 1 and the 0.75. These are actually laid out showing you if we went straight to 0.75, straight to 1, or straight to 2.
Joey, on the distribution side of this, are we already planning to have it upgraded so that we could eventually get to 2 as far as our distribution lines coming into the county?
Yeah, as we start doing modeling and determine which way we're going will depend on the length of the lines and what size lines would have to be put in to be able to get to the 2. And we've looked at a couple options and even going to 5 MGD of how we would actually incorporate that into the lines.
Okay, so we're really looking at the larger size lines we need to upgrade already with this.
Yes, sir.
At every option.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we used a $200 per foot cost as an estimate for putting infrastructure in the ground.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Underwood, question?
Yeah, I had another question. Did we take into account any? I guess we didn't take into account any type of public-private partnerships for cost offsets or anything like that in the study. We just looked purely at cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Some of the things, as we look forward of other opportunities that are there for us are both of the options 1 and 2 are looking at a quarry option in the future. One of them plays into our hand better than the other with the Rappahannock River intake if we were ever to do that, to do a joint project with them. So there's a lot of considerations that I think the board's going to have to look at seriously of long-term what's going to be in our best interest. With the 2 of them being so close in comparison, a lot of it's going to be how does the agreements work between us and them. All these numbers that were laid out, we believe are worst-case scenario, and we think we can negotiate from that point. We put enough contingency in here, hopefully, to be able to protect our interest of where we're at. So we believe these numbers will come down as we work closer and come to an agreement.
Okay. If I may, I know this is the next phase. There's one other option that we probably haven't looked at with one of these guys. Of course, that's, like I said, probably be in the next phase of our study. Over there on 606, that natural impoundment that's over there, we need to look at that, I believe, because there might be a possibility of raw water going to one of the optional folks and maybe get those costs down through that mechanism as well. So,
okay,
we can look at that.
Yes, sir.
Phase. Yeah, that is it.
Mr. Underwood, did you have a question to Ms. Akers?
Just want to make sure, Joey, the infrastructure cost now on page. Well, I don't know. Let's talk about the 1 million gallons. I'm not sure the 750,000 gallon proposal is really something that we to seriously look at. I think we need to go to the million or either 2 million. Now let's go to the 2 million. We talk about the infrastructure cost of $9.6 million.
That's correct.
That is for the lines. What is that for?
Upgrading lines in their locality, possibly pump stations that they need to be able to transport water through their locality, and then the infrastructure to connect our locality to their locality.
Okay. So,
Excuse me. Yeah. For example, for option 1, the infrastructure, you see 9.6 million. Some of it also is expanding their treatment plant. Their current capacity is capped, so they have to expand their treatment plant.
Of that locality treatment plant.
Right. And also the distribution, it involves also the distribution system within the utility that providing us the water, as well as any improvement that is needed within Caroline County system as well.
okay, so this $9.6 million includes or does not include any improvements that need to be done in Caroline County?
It includes the main transmission line connecting the other utility with Caroline County. It does include that.
It does include that. Okay. We would still be having availability fees when a new building comes on, and that's going to help pay for the capital cost?
That's correct.
In that same vein, we have to pay a connection fee to whatever locality we connect to. So are they going to base that on our initial connection of either 1 or 2 million gallons, or does that slide, and do we pay that all at one time, or is that financed also?
Both of the localities have given us an option of financing that for us, so we necessarily wouldn't have to go and borrow the money ourselves. What that does is this fee is actually based on their storage capacity and their treatment capacity and paying into what they have already put in as infrastructure. And we would pay our pro rata share of that portion, 1 or 2 or 0.75 share of that facility. And that's what we would be buying into. So that would basically take care of that portion. The rates basically would then pay for the water, the operation and maintenance of them bringing the water to Caroline through their lines, as well as operating their treatment facilities.
But the connection fee is still a capital cost.
That's correct. That capital cost offsets the capital cost that those other locations.
I understand, but I'm saying it's still a capital cost to us, so it's not only just the infrastructure, but it's the capital cost. So they both work out to be roughly the same amount. For the 2 million gallon option, it's $27 million with connection fee and capital cost.
That's correct.
Even though they're a little different, it's still 30-year amortized $27 million cost for 2 million gallons.
Yes, sir.
How does the cost per 1,000 gallons, and let's just use option one because it's $483 here, our cost would be in buying it from the locality or wherever we get it from. How does that compare to what we now charge?
From a staff-to-staff level at this point, basically the cost per 1,000 is 4 cents difference per gallon, per 1,000 gallons.
Right.
So that's where we're at right now. And again, this is from a staff-to-staff level. By the time we get to a board-to-board level and get into negotiations, we'll see where that number goes. But right now, there's 4 cents difference between each of those localities per 1,000.
So you're saying if it costs a locality, one of the three we're talking about, if it costs them $1 to produce water, they're going to charge us $1.04. Is that what you're saying? The 4 cents difference or whatever?
No, the 4 cents is between the two options. The difference in what we would pay to them. They haven't given us the cost that actually costs them to produce the water at this point. They have worked the numbers out, saying this is what it would cost for them to operate and maintain, and that theoretically this number is supposed to pay for the operation and maintenance of their lines, bringing the water to us in their distribution system, and operating their water treatment facility and staff maintenance, electric, and everything goes along with the O&M with that.
Okay.
But again, going back to what I asked was compared to what we charge today, how does that stack up against what we would have to pay the locality just to receive that water?
We're on a tiered system, and in the percentages that were used, we used an average between our first and second tier to derive these numbers. Now, we have customers that are in the third and fourth tier, so until we actually extrapolate all those numbers and bring them out to get an accurate number, we haven't gotten to that point. We've got to go through the entire budget of operations of what we will not be doing. We won't be buying chemicals anymore. We won't be using electricity. We won't be doing testing at each of these facilities. We won't have staff on a daily basis going to each of our well facilities. So a lot of that stuff will be reduced and make those cost difference so we can actually look at that. And we have not extrapolated any of those numbers to find out what would our rates have to do to support this at this point.
How about under today's circumstances? What are we talking about? Including all those costs that you just mentioned, what are we averaging at this point?
Averaging, I don't
know.
know.
The cost of water.
I don't have that number, Mr. Akers.
But that's something you're going to have for our meeting next week.
That's correct. We've got an entire report. It's probably 35, 40 pages long. We were actually still getting information from other localities as early as this morning and trying to include that into there. On Friday, when the board packet goes out, it'll include that entire report to cover all that, and then we'll have that additional information for the work session next week.
Okay, let me say one thing before you do all that. At this point in time, we have just been working staff to staff.
That's correct.
At this point in time, we have options 1, 2, and 3.
That's
Nobody
correct.
knows who option 1, 2, and 3 is. We would like to keep it that way until we start negotiating fully with whoever option 1, 2, or 3 is. So if you could redact that report when it comes to you, so we'll still just be looking at option 1, 2, and 3, I think that would be a benefit. But there are a lot more things we need to add into that. I think Mr. Akers was trying to get it into our actual cost. We need to know exactly what cost would be avoided or removed, reduced, no longer needed, So we're gonna need all that information, and we'll probably need some sort of financial model to say if we go with option 1, 2, or 3, because I mean, just looking at my math, if the 2 million gallons was the one we talked about, it's going to cost us $3 million a year, but we get $952,000 in revenue. Sounds like an auto industry thing. You know, we lose money on each car, but we make it up in volume. That's not going to work. So we have to make sure those numbers are as close to accurate or as reasonable guesstimates as you can make. Because as it's presented now, if we were just doing this, and I would imagine if the board took a vote on whether we moved ahead or not, they'd all say, well, they're all going to lose money, so let's not move ahead. Now, the other thing that we have to offer, which I'll credit some other folks for, is we're still following along on the Rappahannock withdrawal permit. So if I'm going to talk to a locality about getting water from them, I actually have something to offer them.
That's correct.
You know, which is probably not included in these numbers.
Well, until you exceed 2 million gallons, that doesn't really play into effect. That's really the 5 million. We have talked about that and how that would play out. And actually, one of the localities has said that as we approach 5 million, it makes sense for a joint venture to look at doing that. And that's something we would have to look at seriously at that point. It is going to be very difficult to provide additional information on a limited basis because some of it's laying out exactly locations of lines and lengths of lines, improvements of individual treatment facilities that are necessary to be able to do this, and some of those costs. It does make it very difficult. We will do our best, but it is the information that we currently have is very detailed, and it will be more than what was presented tonight, but it will be very limited from what we actually have.
Mr. Emerson has informed us that since we are actually negotiating, this could be considered privileged information. So we'd like to go into the negotiations as clean as possible.
Absolutely.
And you know, if the options are laid out and it says I'm going to connect to King George and it's going to cost me $5 million to connect to King George, when I go to King George to ask them for water, odds are the price will change. So we're trying to protect ourselves and all the other parties involved. So
yes, sir, I understand.
If you could make it as generic as possible,
Absolutely.
we would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Seeley has one more question, and we're going to let you go.
If you're on the west side of the county and you use 4,000 gallons of water, what's your water bill?
Just water?
Just water.
5,000, I know off the top of my head, is about $20.50 for 5,000 gallons.
So they can multiply that by 1,000.
So 1,000 gallons in the 1 million gallon option would be, the new bill would be $31 for 5,000 gallons.
Entire amount out of the current fees and not include availability fees, that's correct. It appears to be correct.
And there's more to it.
Oh, no.
You know, we have a piece of the picture. This is just a piece of the picture that's a snapshot into where staff's progress is. But staff is eventually going to say, they're saying right now is it's time for upper management, to use your phrase, to actually negotiate further numbers. And again, my point is, if I've got something to offer, my price may be less, you know, and I've got a couple of things to offer, so I want to make sure they're out there. Ms. Egg has one more question.
One clarification. The 483 under option 1, that includes the annual installments for the infrastructure as well as the water usage.
Which option, Mr. Akers?
Option 2 million gallons. Option 1, 2 million gallons.
You want annual cost or capital cost?
No. I'm on the page that says $4.83 per 1,000 gallons. My question to you is, does that include the annual or the capital cost as well as the usage of the water?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the 483 includes everything that we're putting out there. So if the bill went to $31, that would be including the annual cost, and the availability fees that would be charged.
Are additional. We still have
but
$3,500,000
It's additional. No, it's additional.
that we still have to pay out of capital costs after that.
What, yeah?
The $3,500,000.
Yeah, that makes up.
That's the
that's not in
total
the
value.
43.
That
That's
includes
total value.
infrastructure, capital, and
Right.
water. That's the
Right. That
entire
includes it all.
package. If you say we're going to this locality for 2 million gallons, per million gallons, if you were to sell all 2 million gallons, it would cost you $4.83 to pay for the entire
That was the
project.
point I was making. Thank you.
That's correct. Now, one of the things that I hear you looking straight to the 2 million. One of the things we would probably do is negotiate a tiered package where we'd start off coming in. So
We'll deal with that when we start negotiating. Okay. Thank you.
Right, and that's a good point. So I think to repeat that, the $31 a month, as the number we came up, is all the costs included, and that's it. So our next step is we're going to digest this again some. We just got this today for the first time, so we're going to digest this again. We are going to have a work session next Tuesday.
that's correct.
Where we're going to try to put together, and I'm going to ask you, because you have to sell this proposal to us, even though we understand there's a need. But we have to look at the financial ramifications of, if we spend this much, how much will we get back? So you may have to work with Mr. Rogers to get some financial modeling and things of that nature.
We've already started. Actually, the 30 years and 5.5 actually were his numbers. We'd actually looked at a lower rate at 20 years, and he said we need to be looking at a 30-year. The good thing is, again, is the other localities are looking at being able to finance this for us, at least for the infrastructure cost on their side. Anything that needs to be put in the ground on our side, we would probably have to pick that cost up.
Right.
But anything as far as paying for capital that they've already expended, both of them would definitely, if we were rated bond-wise, both of them have a better rating than we would. So their interest rate's actually probably going to be lower than ours anyway. So that's another tool.
All right, I think that's what. Okay, give me one last one, Mr. Shamat. What is in your cost components on like the third page? You've got infrastructure improvements, water mains, tanks,
Pump stations.
pump stations.
Yes.
Yes, I thought it was postscript, but okay. Pump stations. All right, that was the one thing I needed to know. Thank you, sir. Mr. Popowitz, you have the last word, and then we're going to move on.
All right. Did we ask them, Joey, any of the localities, if we could work out a possible solution where it was on their side for the infrastructure, where it be included in the rate rather than us paying a direct fee or a direct payment to them?
That wasn't necessarily discussed. A roundabout way, it was talked about, but from the discussions we had, it appears that they would rather us pay for the direct rate of the infrastructure. That way, that's a known cost, and they know that they recoup that cost out of there. But I mean, that's definitely something as we move forward to negotiating that we can look at discussing further.
Yeah, because we're gonna be going, as we move forward, we're gonna have more and more users on the facility.
That's correct.
And if we could maybe we can do a stepped payback or
And there's a
something like that.
possibility that we could start off with the 0.75 and have a reduced rate for the availability, and then when you step up to the next one and they have to move forward, we pay a larger portion at that time. So there's a bunch of things that we can do, I think, in negotiating contracts. Both of the localities of the 1 and 2 options have regional plans now, so they're already buying and selling water with other localities. So it works into our favor.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your hard work,
Thank you.
and thank you for the comprehensive report. Mr. Shamet, will you be with us next week?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you again. Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item number 3. Reports from supervisor liaisons, if you have one. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman,
You can turn your mic on.
the only liaison report I had was from the Parks and Rec Department and the Parks and Recreation